on the readout.
Many people have asked me what my position is on abortion and abortion rights, especially since I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of something that all legal scholars, both sides, wanted and, in fact, demanded be ended. Roe v. Wade.
That's a lie, of course. Only the extreme religious right wanted to take away a woman's right to control her own reproductive choices. But Trump wants to have it both ways on abortion, trying to hang on to some women voters while not angering his evangelical base. Senator Elizabeth Warren joins me to discuss that, as well as President Biden's new student debt forgiveness plan and how Russian propaganda is seeping into the rhetoric of congressional Republicans. Happy Eclipse Day to all of those who were lucky enough to be in the path. Let's hope that the majority of you didn't stare directly into the flaming ball of plasma like your former president, who seemed to think that the laws of science did not apply to him. April 8th is not just Eclipse Day. It also happens to be the day 50 years ago that Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's all-time home run record by slamming home his 715th. With a simple swing of his bat, Aaron beat back streams of racist death threats and taunts to become one of the greatest players in baseball history. Today is also a good reminder that there are great marvels and great men in the world. And then there is Donald Trump, who paused his God complex and endless comparisons to Jesus, Alexei Navalny, and Abraham Lincoln to compare himself to another man far greater than him, Nelson Mandela. Over the weekend, Trump once again claimed victimhood. He did so while again attacking Judge Juan Marchand, who is overseeing the hush money election interference trial that's set to start next week. Trump posted the following on his scam website, Truth Social, quote, "If this partisan hack wants to put me in the clink for speaking the open and obvious truth, I will gladly become a modern-day Nelson Mandela. It will be my great honor." Well, before I go any further, it might be helpful for us, and for Trump specifically, to remember who exactly Nelson Mandela was and what he did for his country and the world. Unlike Donald Trump, Nelson Mandela was a man of great humility, decency, and courage. And while he was born into actual African royalty, Mandela remained a man of modest means who slept on mats and used his elbows for pillows. His father did not give him great wealth. What he did give him was his hand-me-down clothing. It was in the late 1940s when the Afrikaner Nationalist Party won the whites-only general election and began implementing apartheid across South Africa that Mandela's path would change. It was then that he decided that he would dedicate his life to opposing apartheid legislation, which subjugated South Africa's black majority. His fight for freedom from oppression made him a target by white Afrikaners. The fight against apartheid escalated over the next decade, leading to the 1960 Sharpeville massacre, in which white police fired into a crowd of peaceful protesters, killing 69 people. That led Mandela and other African leaders to mount general strikes and protests, which led to more escalation and a ban not just on strikes and protests, but on Mandela's African National Congress itself. In 1964, Mandela received a life sentence, not for trying to overturn an election, but for protesting the fact that Africans, who were 80% of the population in an African country, were not allowed to participate in them. He narrowly escaped the death penalty on charges that included treason, and he spent 27 years in prison, hidden from the world, because his calls for equality were deemed a threat to white supremacy, including in the United States, where Mandela was labeled a terrorist by the Reagan administration. He was released from prison in 1990 to become the country's first black president. But before he was sentenced, Mandela recited the following from memory. "During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Up until 2008, the United States continued to officially deem Nelson Mandela a terrorist, with the State and Defense Departments declaring the African National Congress to be a terrorist group. Mandela's name remained on the U.S. terrorism watch list, even after he was sworn in as president. Donald Trump is no Nelson Mandela. In fact, Trump is currently leading a party that has declared that white people are the real victims of racism and that black and brown people are dirty animals from S-hole countries who deserve to be placed in internment camps or shot either at the border or at protests for daring to ask for what Nelson Mandela was asking for: justice and equality. This weekend, Trump kept up his racist diatribes while speaking to a gathering of uber-wealthy Republican donors and defending his previous comments that people from African countries like Haiti and South Africa are S-hole countries. He reportedly defended those comments by saying, why can't we allow people to come in from nice countries, like Denmark, Switzerland? Do we have any people coming in from Denmark? How about Switzerland? How about Norway? Countries that just so happen to be overwhelmingly white. What do these millionaires get in exchange for Trump's blatant racism, xenophobia, criminality, and violence? Well, a promise to extend their tax cuts, which are set to expire in 2025. What do those people give up for Trump's promise to maintain their precious tax cuts, aside from their dignity and their morality? Well, just a little over $500,000 each in donations to his campaign. And boy, was his campaign eager to crow about it. Lara Trump, the daughter-in-law, gloated that they doubled the amount that the Biden-Harris campaign raised just 2 weeks ago. Well, the Biden campaign and Democrats did indeed raise $26 million in a single night last week, using a diversity of high-wattage celebrities and former presidents Clinton and Obama. The money they raised came from 5,000 people who paid anywhere from $225 to $500,000, leaving the Biden campaign with far more cash on hand than the Trump campaign, which the Biden-Harris campaign is using on television ads and for opening field offices in key states around the country. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign will be spending a significant portion of their fundraising haul from, 100 and some odd people, on Trump's legal defense fund, which includes more pathetically desperate attempts to delay next week's trial. Today, he tried to postpone the trial while arguing to move the venue, a motion that was denied. He's also suing to have Judge Juan Marchand removed from the case and to have the gag order lifted. We also learned what else Trump's crony friends have given him. And according to the Daily Beast, it's apparently a dubious $175 million bond that doesn't actually promise that it will even pay the money if the former president loses his $464 million fraud case on appeal. Again, that man is no Mandela. Upton, Big Brother Rev, please, I'm going to just let you have the floor to comment on Donald Trump having the raw nerve to compare himself to a man that you actually got a chance to know, Nelson Mandela.
Well, it is atrocious. First of all, Nelson Mandela went to jail trying to fight to get people of color, black people in South Africa, the right to vote in their own land. Donald Trump is facing charges, particularly in Georgia, of trying to deny those that had voted in the election there and try to disenfranchise them by trying to get votes that allegedly never happened. I was an election observer in 1994 in South Africa, and I could not imagine Nelson Mandela, who I did get to speak with and know when my visits there and his visits here. I couldn't imagine him calling saying, I need 11,000 more votes out of Durban. Can you help me? I need some more votes out of Cape Town. To try and belittle a man who literally changed the democracy as we now witness in South Africa to a man who tried to undermine a democracy is to desecrate the whole movement of democracy around the world. Even for Donald Trump, this is lower than anything I could have imagined, to compare himself to someone who is not only unlike him, but fought for the exact opposite of what he has demonstrated in his own maneuvers to undermine black voters and, for that matter, undervoters, to the point where he's under indictment for doing something. Nelson Mandela became inducted in a global Hall of Fame of freedom fighters. Donald Trump has been indicted in 4 different federal districts among the charges trying to undermine people's right to vote or the value of those that did vote.
Thank goodness that Letitia James called him on his BS. The $175 million. Everybody's like, well, okay, at least he came up with it. After they reduced it, Catherine, they gave him a break. And he comes forward with some guy who says he's going to give him a bond. No, he didn't. The little-known insurance company that rescued Donald Trump, per the Daily Beast, by providing a last-minute $175 million bank fraud bond, isn't just unlicensed in New York. It hasn't even been vetted by a voluntary state entity that would verify that it meets the minimum eligibility standards to prove financial stability. Perhaps even more troubling, the legal document from Knight Specialty Insurance Company doesn't actually promise that it will pay the money if the former president loses his $464 million bank fraud case on appeal. Instead, it says Trump will pay, negating the whole point of an insurance company guarantee. Even the bond post, Catherine, was a fraud.
Yeah, yes. I mean, as you said, even the fact that it was not licensed into New York, you could maybe forgive. But all of the other reasons you just gave makes it a useless bond, because the whole point is that if Donald Trump loses his appeal, the attorney general wants to be able to enforce the judgment. But there's not going to be any money there because the bond does not really exist, because then it goes back to, as you said, Donald Trump. So it's interesting because a trial that involved civil fraud and found Donald Trump liable for repeatedly committing fraud, that a bond that would be put up is probably fraudulent. You can't make this up.
Reverend Sharpton, the other difference, there are so many, between Nelson Mandela and Donald Trump is that Nelson Mandela wasn't afraid to go to prison. Donald Trump clearly is. And the reason he's doing the most and now trying to sue the judge and now trying to throw all these useless appeals is he's terrified that this case is going to start next week. And he clearly doesn't have any money, which is why he put up the fake bond.
Well, he clearly is petrified of going to jail, and he's using all kinds of maneuvers to try to even avoid a trial. And the difference is, as you read in the opening, Nelson Mandela said he was proud to go to jail. He would even be willing to die for the cause. Well, what cause is Donald Trump trying to stand for? A cause of trying to defraud banks and insurance companies out of their money, a cause of trying to rob people of the right to vote and women their right to choose. I mean, what is his cause? So not only is he not like Mandela as a man, he has no mission other than his own self-aggrandizement and his own narcissism. The only thing that you can find some value in is there's some people that would not argue if he got 27 years in jail like Mandela, but it would be for many different reasons.
I think people would be quite glad. People might clap and applaud. David Jolly, I'm going to give you the last word on this, because Donald Trump, who claims he just wants Swedish people and people from Norway in the country, he used to lie about being Swedish. He claimed in Art of the Deal that his family was Swedish and they're German. But I wanted you to just explain to me, as somebody who used to be a Republican politician, explain these people in this room. It was like 112 some odd people that each put up $500,000 to be in the room with Donald Trump and promise him money. The guy whose home it was came, I believe, from South America, what Donald Trump would consider an S-hole country. Vivek Ramaswamy, who comes from India, which Donald Trump would consider a S-hole country that they don't want people from. Where is the dignity of these people? Are they so desperate for just another bloody tax cut that they would humiliate themselves by hanging around with a guy who does Nazi talk?
Yeah, I think what we've learned is whether you have $1 billion or $10, some people are okay with autocracy and with somebody who peddles in racism and xenophobia. I mean, we know from Donald Trump that he's okay with white immigrants, but not immigrants of color. That's essentially his own words. And look, we don't know what's in someone's heart, but we know what's on their lips. And what's on Donald Trump's lips when it comes to immigration is racist and xenophobic, and we should call it as much. I would suggest what we're seeing among the donor community, again, the billionaires are the people giving $10, is a negotiation with themselves. It's a negotiation with themselves that they are okay with the cultural movement that Donald Trump has ignited, this white nationalist movement, if they are the winning side politically. From Jamie Dimon to Joe Smith, look, there's a shame that should be cast upon all of them.
I will just channel Nelson Mandela all the way to Medgar Evers and say, find out who these billionaires are that are giving to an autocrat and act accordingly with your dollars, because you can choose whether you're going to do business with them or not with your money. Reverend Al Sharpton, David Jolly, Catherine Christian, thank you all very much. Up next.
I did more for the black community than anybody, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln, whether you like it or not.
Shout to season. I think for me, you know, most.
The reviews are in.
You have to go by where, look.
Here's what Trump's own people are saying about him. He's a moron. Rex Tillerson, Trump's Secretary of State.
We're lower than the world.
Lower than the world. He tries to divide us. James Mattis, Trump's Secretary of Defense.
You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other. Very fine people on both sides.
He's an idiot. John Kelly, Trump's Chief of Staff.
They weren't laughing at me.
A professional liar. Gary Cohn, Trump's economic advisor.
There will be no lies.
He thinks he's God. Barbara Rez, SVP of Trump Organization.
I am the chosen one.
Like an 11-year-old child, Steve Bannon, Trump's advisor.
I don't take responsibility.
I think we need to look harder at who we elect.
I don't think he's fit for office.
I have the most loyal people.
Can America survive 4 more years? He's a moron. 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 Rex Tillerson, Trump's Secretary of State.